Ito lang po. Thank you.
Bilis mag-accumulate ng participants, no? Aga sila.
With Globe, our steps can lead us to millions of doors opening, millions of paths unfolding, and millions of reasons to keep going. Now's the time to be with a network that gets better every day for you.
Malaki ang epekto sa amin ng pandemic. Bagsak ang negosyo namin pero sinagip kami ng online selling. Kung hindi siguro dahil sa Globe, wala kasi nagtry ako ng iba. Wala very reliable ang network nila.
Because so much of our lives are online. If you get disconnected,
Ready for our recitation, kids?
do you even exist? Welcome to the Red Life. Introducing Red Fiber. 100% fiber internet. A life with reliable connection. With flexible plans for different lifestyles. No worries of getting cut off. And dependable customer service. So when it matters most, you're always ready.
Good job, Jacob.
Get ready for the Red Life. Red Fiber, reliability redefined.
Welcome to the National Multisectoral Summit for Educational Transformation and Academe Alumni Industry Government Collaboration.
The main objective of this AAIG 2021 webinar series is to catalyze the transformation of the Philippine educational landscape towards Education 4.0 by enjoining the Academe, alumni, industry, and government sectors to come together in dialogue to adopt pioneering and collaborative practices in bringing the academe and industry gap, and to continue to be an efficient and sustainable platform.
Heavenly Father, we praise and thank you for this gathering of the members of the Academe, alumni, industry, and the government in order to hold meaningful conversations that will benefit the alumni of the university and all other graduates in whose hands the future of our country rests.
Addressing these learning gaps in higher levels of education or within the school-to-work transition will require additional resources that may not be available to all educational institutions or industries absorbing the products of our educational system unless adequate government support are made available to both public and private sectors.
You can now start thinking about how Industry 4.0 and the use of data in the internet is actually helping you to actually make better decisions, more reliable decisions, and at the same time, set a path for yourself. People need the ability to make sense of this information, to tell the difference between what is important, what is unimportant, and above all, combine many bits of information into a broad picture of the world. It is important that leadership skills of empathy, listening, finding your own purpose, communicating, and collaboration continue to be an important and fundamental part of the education system that we have, but also a very important part of the society that we continue to live.
A shared value relationship between educational institutions and companies, blueprinted probably by policymakers, can help facilitate workforce transitions. Fundamental to this preparation is expanding and enhancing the digital infrastructure in the learning space, including those who are studying remotely, such as China, Malaysia, India, and Singapore, in a quest to build their economies focused on offering STEM programs in their institutions. And so we must identify and correct long-standing imbalances in the educational systems. I believe now more than ever, smart and strategic industry and academic partnerships must be more integrated and value-enhancing to both. We have to transform the campus as a hub not only for learning best practices, but the staging platform for next practices.
This call for educators to urgently adapt to the needs of our times and respond to multiple adaptive and transformative challenges necessary for the revitalization of the vital roles of government, academe, and industry to actively involve in the discussion and co-create systemic and long-term solutions. This is an assertion of the Commission that tertiary education must espouse the notions, procedures, and processes of 21st century learning. The education of the new millennium connotes revolutionized approaches to realize excellent teaching and learning that are at par with international standards. May these catalyze further partnerships of the government and non-government agencies with the Commission on Higher Education as we continue to heal and learn as one.
Regardless of what industry number that we will transition to in the future, all of these things that you have learned are actually very important and key to success of our country and to your own success. So please continue to leverage on these learnings. Please continue to reach out and continue to collaborate, not just with your students, but to the professors, to the teachers, to the industry that you want to belong with in the future.
We have to all work together And we have to open ourselves to whatever opportunities ang dumating sa atin. At pag dumating yung opportunity na yan, you just have to blossom where you are planted. And you will be rewarded with so many things. Sometimes unexpectedly.
This is my commitment and this is my obligation to all our students that I will continue initiating projects and initiatives for the CHED to properly address the concerns of our students in this COVID-19 pandemic and even the post-COVID life or post-COVID scenario. No? Thank you.
Para mas simple lang, tingin ko may 3 UST lang ang pwedeng mag-synthesize ng mga nangyari ngayong umagang to. U for me is understanding. Understanding is a generic term but it is quite a powerful term because it will allow us to know what is happening. Meron tayong nasyon na kailangan ng tao. I think it's a call for citizenship if you're going to ask me. The understanding should be transforming into some kind of a response. Kaya nga, paano naman tayo magre-respond? Yung pangalawa, skill. I think it's very important for us to gain skills and that the new educational era will be all about skills. More importantly, human skills, social skills, relationship. Partnership is important. That communication is important. Dapat magsama-sama tayo. Ang isang policies, standards, and guidelines ay hindi lang ginagawa ng mga nagtuturo, subalit nagpa-practice din ng profesyon. And T for me is technologies. Wherever you look at it, I think technologies is something that weaves into the presentation of today's webinar. Whatever industry it would be, I know that we will continuously struggle, but in that struggle, if we understand, if we have the skill, and we make use of good technologies, I think we are prepared to face what the post-COVID era will be for us.
Sa aming mga nagla-livestream, mahalaga yung maayos na koneksyon. Nakakahiya pag naglalagang signal. Malaki na pinag-iba ngayon. Okay na yung 4G pero mas lalong gumanda ng 5G. Our live stream will not be possible kung hindi malakas ang signal ng Globe.
Yung alam ko na 15 to 20 Mbps na speed, nadoble na pala. Partida, 4G lang ang gamit ko nito. Ang laking bagay kasi pag yung video calling sa streaming hindi naglalag. Pati yung pag-feed namin sa base, sobrang smooth na din. Ever since I'm using Globe, kaya kitang-kita ko ang improvement na network.
Because so much of our lives are online. If you get disconnected,
Ready for our recitation, kids?
do you even exist? Welcome to the Red Life. Introducing Red Fiber. 100% fiber internet. A life with reliable connection. With flexible plans for different lifestyles. No worries of getting cut off. And dependable customer service. So when it matters most, you're always ready.
Good job, Jacob.
Get ready for the Red Life. Red Fiber. Reliability redefined.
I'm Dr. Manny Baton. I'll be your host and moderator in this webinar. Webinar 2 is a sequel in the story of the whole summit. And we are responding to a theme. What are the challenges that Industry 4.0 brings to higher education?
Heavenly Father, open our minds to see and understand in the way you would want us to the disruptions, disturbances, and disorders in the industry that impacts our educational system.
And as we shift to Industry 4.0, in the midst of the pandemic, the challenges and issues have become more pronounced, doubly difficult to address. We need to think to calibrate our strategies to address these challenges. What is important at the moment is to strike a balance between the strategies and solutions we offer to address the problems and issues posed by the pandemic with its possible impact and outcomes.
Let me focus on the COVID-19 pandemic. We will agree that it has indeed changed the way we do things, such as in education, work, and entertainment. It has forced to adapt us to the fourth industrial revolution. We see that COVID-19 demonstrated the importance of digital readiness among us, especially our learners and workers. I would like to take this opportunity to advocate the Philippine Qualifications Framework. It is a quality-assured national system for the development, recognition, and award of qualification based on standards of knowledge, skills, and values acquired in different ways and methods by learners and workers in the country. Lumabas talaga na issue and challenge is how we will be able to popularize the Philippine Qualifications Framework. How will Juan and Juana really appreciate this particular framework? And what is in it for government, academic, industry if we have a Philippine Qualifications Framework?
Ang edukasyon, agham, teknolohiya, sining, kultura, pati ang palakasan at pareho po ang DepEd at CHED, ang higher education institution, may kinalaman po rito ay dapat pong bigyan ng prioridad ng Estado to foster patriotism, nationalism, accelerate social progress, and promote total human liberation and development. At nais ko lang pong diinan kung bakit po mahalaga itong forum na ito. At I'm sure CHED and TESDA also has that framework in actively engaging the family, our community, and other stakeholders in making sure that when we do our mandate to make sure that there's lifelong learning, kailangan maunawaan po ng buong komunidad, ng buong bansa, na ito po hindi lamang aming mandato, trabaho sa DepEd at pati na rin sa CHED at TESDA, that we have to engage partners and make them realize that this is not the responsibility alone of DepEd, CHED, and TESDA, but a collective responsibility.
Higher education needs to move beyond existing approaches. It needs to restructure and utilize new methods of teaching and learning. This process of restructuring higher education must start with restructuring basic education. Learners need a strong foundation in literacy and numeracy. It is imperative that we restructure our education system immediately. We cannot stand still. We must redouble our efforts to shorten the gap or even overtake the other countries.
The primary barriers to Industry 4.0 are lack of financial capability and unfamiliarity. Due to the changing landscape, there is a need to upskill and reskill, topics that we have discussed with TESDA and DepEd. Upskill and reskill our young students, given that the Philippines has a relatively young population with a median age of 25 years old. We need to develop a highly educated workforce for the future. This is the often cited factor why many of the foreign investors now located in the country are here. The pandemic situation has resulted in the accelerated adoption of digital tools and automation of tasks in all levels of our lives. So let me just emphasize that investments in new technologies, digitalization, and innovation are investments on resilience, sustainability, competitiveness, and long-term business growth, which are all necessary as we enter our economic recovery. Together, let us help create a strong manufacturing industry. And by manufacturing, I also include industry and services that will build back better a more competitive and innovative Philippines.
Let's keep people at the center of all our fourth industrial revolution transformation plans, and that would be applicable to all the academe, the industry, as well as with the government.
I would like to reiterate my call to look into the advocacy ng PQF, the Philippine Qualifications Framework, and also look into pursuing and offering TVET qualifications in the institution.
Alam niyo mga anak, may katapusan din lahat ito, ang pandemyang ito mga anak ay matapos. Maging matibay kayo mga anak, mag-aral mabuti, mahalin ang mga magulang at pamilya, at maging responsableng Filipino.
I urge that our government make sure that we have connectivity for all and from all parts of the Philippines. To the students, you should get digital literacy and look into life skills that are also quite needed. And as I said, the most important, that you really form your character.
Good day. Good day, everyone. And depending on where you are from around the world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And so I wish to welcome you all to the National Multisectoral Summit for Educational Transformation, an Academe, alumni, industry, government collaboration for the AAIG 2021 Summit. The topic today for this webinar, Webinar 4, is towards a robust ecosystem for transformative education. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Atty. Dwight Ramos. I'm Second Vice President of the UST Law Alumni Foundation. I'll be responsible for hosting this webinar today, and I'm glad to welcome all our guest speakers and all our distinguished guests for today's event. I would like to thank our sponsors for this summit, Globe Telecoms, CBRC Vice, Radius Telecoms, and Metrorail Transit Corporation. Now, for us to begin, we will have the invocation, and let me call on Monsignor Bernardo R. Pantin, the President of the UST Alumni Priests Association, for the invocation.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. We stand before you, Holy Spirit, as we gather together in your name. With you alone to guide us, make yourself at home in our hearts. As we culminate today this National Multisectoral Summit for Educational Transformation, let us find in you our unity, so that the Academe, alumni, industry, and government may journey together to create a transformative education. Teach us the way we must go and how we are to pursue it. Do not let ignorance lead us down the wrong path, nor partiality influence our actions. Lead us to the way of truth and what is right. All this we ask of you, who are at work in every place and time, in the communion of the Father and the Son, forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Let's all now rise for the national anthem.
Sa maglewi na mahal
for the opening remarks. You may now sit on your comfortable seat as we begin to maintain the flow of the program and to welcome us all. Let's have Dr. Fe A. Hidalgo, the former OIC Secretary and Undersecretary of the Department of Education. Ma'am Fe.
Good morning, everyone. 3 years ago, the first 3-day summit of Alumni, Academe, Industry, and Government, AAIG, met towards a strategic move for collaborative and inclusive public and private sector partnership in development. We had hoped, and we had high hopes, that the movement was the beginning of a more progressive initiative for development, and that we will see more progressive initiatives, more fellows and scholars as well. As we move towards more productive partnerships and networks in the immediate future and in the long-term journey for progress. Our coming together in this second summit is a fulfillment of what we had hoped for the long journey for progress, which is here very much today. As we begin our discourse, let me share with you an inspiring quote to begin with. The art of progress is to preserve order amid change, and to preserve change amid order. I wish you all a pleasant gathering and a very productive gathering as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fe, for that very warm welcome to all of us and setting the tone, of course, for this fourth webinar. Now, to continue, let's watch a short video as a recap to the webinar 3 held last October 1 with the theme Higher Education in the Industry 4.0 Era.
Welcome to the National Summit on Academe, Alumni, Industry, Government Collaboration. The title is Higher Education in the Industry 4.0.
Loving God, we feel your divine presence here in this webinar. Bless all our speakers, that they may become your mouthpiece in sharing progressive thoughts and opinions that will inspire our participants to work things out in applying learnings today in their workplaces for the good of all.
As we continue with our journey in this summit, we see ourselves moving closer to the achievement of the objective we have set at the beginning, that is, to catalyze the transformation of the Philippine educational landscape in bridging the academe and industry gap. The fourth industrial revolution has changed the landscape of educational innovation. The exact impacts of such technologies on society and the planet is still unknown, but the fact that they will bring profound and rapid change seems all but certain. In the future, there will be a lot of changes in ways of teaching and learning, but the logic of education systems should be such that it is a system that conforms to the learner rather than the learner to the system.
Sustainability at Globe is one of our practices at this point in time. The things that we do at the education sector contributes to the creation of a digital nation. It is widely known that the education sector is one of the most severely impacted by the pandemic. As a sector response, we supported the Department of Education in 3 key areas. First is to address the limited access to the internet. Second, we supported teachers with professional training to boost their confidence in delivering remote learning. And third, we help address the anxiety amongst teachers, students, and parents brought by the pandemic by providing mental wellness programs. As part of our commitment to the education sector, we recently launched Go Learn. Go Learn is a unified initiative that brings together products, programs, and services that will empower the whole learning ecosystem. It aims to deliver affordable connectivity for all, highly accessible platforms aligned with current learning setup, and safer learning environments to protect our educators and learners from online risks.
So the most affected sector during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially during the lockdown, this was the private sector. It's not the big schools, especially the small and medium-sized private schools all over the country. So it's very unfortunate for us, even my institution, because we were struggling for 4 months from April to July before the opening of classes. So we tried our best what to do, especially from the financial assistance to our teachers, considering that they are just earning a little. The Employees Compensation Commission is an attached agency of the Department of Labor and Employment, and its administering agency is the Social Security System. And the Employees Compensation Program helped a lot, especially from those affected teaching and non-teaching personnel, because before they did not know that COVID-19 is covered with the Employees Compensation Financial Assistance. Of course, we are struggling. I think this is very evident with the experiences that we have. We are still surviving. Of course, we need, in order to survive, to sustain our existence, because the main purpose of education is nation building. We are partner of the government in nation building, and we hope that the government will continue to assist us, especially in facilitating our students to continue their studies amidst the pandemic.
So now is the right time actually to capitalize on and look at this pandemic as an opportunity, to revolutionize and to change and put innovation into education. So, EdTech is actually the process of integrating technology. So it's basically not replacing teachers, but it's really to build better experiences in teaching and learning, and hoping that the outcomes will be much better. Now, I think the next step is for them, and which is now being done, is to have limited face-to-face. Honestly, we won't go back to 100% face-to-face. Eventually, we'll be doing hybrid. Now, let's take this opportunity in this pandemic to revolutionize education to EdTech. And I think educators should be the prime mover here.
The Industry 4.0 is not only about the advancement of technology. It is all about making humans at the center of the situation. Technology should be there in order to serve humanity. And so what is needed is still much collaboration among humans, among people. They should still learn how to empathize. It's also a time for the higher education institution to see the new role of liberal arts and humanities. It is the discipline of the liberal arts that will help us find meaning and deepen our understanding of a new situation of humanity wherein much is assisted by technology.
Because IR 4.0 is not going away, because that is the future. We have to be able to keep up with the advancement. So whether it is the laws, the enabling laws that we need to put out there to mandate digital transformation in the country, the use of digital technologies, the creation of new modalities of learning, the creation of new curriculum that will allow us to keep up with the technology and with the times. So my parting words are, let's please collaborate. We can't do it alone.
I look at the pandemic as a great reset. I think this is a good time for us to start. Especially, we have a lot of time. There's no stopping actually everyone to be teachers, to be educators. In fact, it democratizes learning as well, because I know the great teachers are also not just in the academe but also in the industry.
Okay, all these things will not mean anything if in the end we will lose our humanity. Kaya nga, as the technology rises up, and so the basic component of being human should also rise up. Okay? Andyan ang technology, pero anong ang technology magiging tool lang natin in order to enhance and improve our relationships with one another. And of course, when I say humanity, it won't be long that we will discuss about who created humanity. Okay? Hindi mawawala sa equation ng ating reality ang presensya ng higher being, and that is God. Okay?
Yes. And so there you have it. That was webinar 3 of the National Multisectoral Summit for Educational Transformation, and with the theme, Higher Education in the Industry 4.0 Era. And so now we will proceed to webinar 4, which is themed towards a robust ecosystem for transformative education. Now, before we proceed and get started, I just would like to give a few items for the participants in today's event, just sort of reminders. First, the participants' microphone and camera are turned off throughout the duration of this webinar. We will not have a Q&A or open forum during this last webinar. Instead, we will give the panelists and participants the time to submit their impressions about this whole summit. And you may send in your impressions in the chat box at any time during the presentation of the guest speakers, and we will collect these and read some of them after the presentation of our last speaker. Please remain until the very end of the highlight for the highlight of this webinar, which is the manifestation of solidarity. We will provide the link to the survey or evaluation form in the chat box, and you may access the link after this webinar. Certificates will be provided after you submit your completed evaluation forms. So now we would like to introduce our first speaker for this morning, and he is Dr. WILFREDO Cabral, who is very much part of our Academe, Alumni, Industry, and Government journey of transformational education. In 2019, during the first AAIG Summit, he marshaled the participation of school leaders in the National Capital Region to actively participate and contribute to the overall success of the AAIG 2019. And we are happy and glad that for this AAIG 2021, he will now be our first speaker. RD Willie, or UWC, the acronym for USEC WILFREDO Cabral, as he is fondly called, is the Regional Director of DepEd National Capital Region and the current officer in charge of the Office of the Undersecretary for Human Resource and Organizational Development. He runs the operational activities and provides strategic directions and leadership to the Bureau of Human Resource and Organizational Development. He was also tasked to provide administrative supervision over the International Cooperation Office, or the ICO, and exercise oversight functions to those international commitments related to the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization, or CIMEO, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the ASEAN, and the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or the APEC. Prior to these designations, he served as the Regional Director for the DepEd Region 4A, Calabarzon. Although he has served the region for only a year, he is familiar with it, hailing from the neighboring Mimaropa region. RD Willie, or UWC, holds a degree in Bachelor of Science in Education, major in Mathematics, and later earned his master's degree in the same field. He studied Doctor of Philosophy in Calapan City and also took up doctorate in Educational Management in WCC and at De La Salle Consortium. He rose from the ranks as an educator. From a humble teacher, he became head teacher in Oriental Mindoro. In 2003, he got promoted as education supervisor, and in 2006, as assistant school superintendent in DepEd Oriental Mindoro, which led him to the right kind of people and experience. His professional journey as Schools Division Superintendent for 3 years in Occidental Mindoro developed him the right keen and sense on working with people, bringing about great ideas, and later on would be beneficial to his executive stint in the National Capital Region. In 2013, he began to set off big difference in Schools Division of Valenzuela, and later on, assuming the concurrent post in 2015 as officer in charge for the Office of the Assistant Regional Director. With a multitude of challenges in highly urbanized region, he worked his way with humor and humility. This proved how he successfully managed concurrent offices with one of the largest division, that of Manila, back in 2016. He assumed the office of the Regional Director after Dr. Ponciano Manguito's retirement in 2017. One indicator of the range and breadth of R.D. Willy's knowledge and expertise is the fact that he has truly distinguished himself as an authority in governance matters in the department. He was reassigned in DepEd Calabarzon on September 16, 2019, and recently moved back to the NCR. He has worked with intuitiveness, practical mindset, and creativity at the helm of organization development in Calabarzon, as committed as he first came to work as a teacher. And he presently works for the welfare of the NCR learners and teachers. R.D. Willy dedicates himself in the service of the Filipino youth for the promotion of better quality of education. Lastly, he has 15 years of institutional contribution in basic education as third-level official and 12 years as career executive service officer. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Wilfredo E. Cabral.
Good morning, everyone. Allow me to share my screen for this presentation. And the topic that I am about to discuss this morning is more on the fundamental question on how basic education can usher us to the future, and how we collectively see education as a vehicle that allows our learners to see things differently from the perspective of self and the environment. And before I proceed, I'd like to, of course, say hello and thanks to my mentor, Dr. Hidalgo, and all of those who are attending virtually for taking part in this activity. As you know, the discussion that I am going to have this morning is actually inspired by one of the many books that I used to read, and that has something to do with future-wise education. So as I mentioned, how do we really usher everyone, our learners, to the future? And we believe that critical to this is a robust and a balanced ecosystem that will yield transformative education. You know for a fact that literature provides vast and extensive knowledge base of what transformative education is, but co-creating ecosystem that supports it is one thing that we need to discover through a journey of like-minded people pushing for life-worthy learning for all learners. And given the context, the qualitative judgment of what life-worthy learning is difficult to define. Life-worthy, as Perkins puts it, is something that is likely to matter in the lives that they are likely to live. That's mouthful and too broad. And even the author said that it is very hard to offer a long list of those life-worthy learning. And to determine what is the bundle of knowledge that can be learned and may have an impact in their future lives is even more challenging. And as such, based on further articulation and elaboration, though we say that education needs to respond as the fast-changing world requires education beyond the basics. So we are actually in the VUCA world, and it demands for a vision of education that is focused more of the unknown, much of the known. This is characterized by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, in such that the vision of education is anchored on best guesses of what is likely to happen and foregrounded on flexible knowledge likely to inform whatever does happen. And again, Perkins boldly say that educating for the unknown can be an alluring and inspiring agenda as it fosters curiosity, enlightenment, empowerment, and responsibility in a complex and dynamic world. It favors a broad and visionary reach for meaningful learning. But we are now well beyond the VUCA world, in that the significance of knowledge learned in schools to the demands of the professions and workplaces, where the meaning of the term functioning effectively has shifted profoundly in the job markets. As such, the VUCA world showed that at the front is overshadowing everything is disruption. And whether it is in the form of technology, social change, industry reconfiguration, or the like. And we are about to continue to experience volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And added to that is diversity. And that includes gender balance, cross-cultural, and intergenerational diversity. So when in the face of this deep and widespread change that are transforming our world in disrupting the institutional status quo in many sectors, such as climate change, pandemic, and advances in artificial intelligence, to name a few, these things pose fundamental challenges to both the goals and methods of education. And these challenges throws up challenging questions. What knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values of today's learners need to thrive, or what they need to thrive and shape their world? And how can institutional system develop this knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values effectively? We say that technology and society are heavily connected, and faster changes in technology often translate to changes in the society. Moreover than that, it translates to greater unpredictability in the form of the VUCA world. As you see in the figure, the exponential progress of computing power from 1900s to 2013, with projection in 2025, which is just 4 years from now, as Gordon Moore observed, that computing power was doubling approximately every 2 years, a pattern that remains consistent to this day. And from this figure, we can see that by 2025, artificial intelligence is projected to parallel the processing capacity of human brain. And if this trend continues well beyond, each year making more progress than it did before. And so therefore, this has something to do with what, again, Perkins in his book Future-Wise made mention about the small world paradox. He said that the recent phenomenon of buzzing connectivity in today's world make the world smaller, but worlds we individually engage become more numerous and complex. The world of online and digital lives, the worlds of entertainment and media, e-books, e-travel, conferences, etc. And with these developments, the hierarchical arrangement and organization of what is deemed to be important or what is deemed important to teach may not really mirror the reality of today. Instead, we need to look at curriculum, view the curriculum as a network where disciplines are developed in an interdisciplinary relationship with one another. And this makes curriculum richly connected to the life and world problems and opportunities as 21st century skills inform the learning process. This is further highlighted in the Goal 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. With this goal, which states that by 2030, ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and non-violence, global citizenships, and appreciation of cultural diversity and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. By stating that all learners must acquire knowledge and skills needed to live sustainably, Target 0.7 calls for a transformative change in education throughout the world, in that the inclusion of a goal and target of this nature in the SDGs was even foreshadowed in the 2012 when UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon launched in the Global Education First Initiative. And he said, it is not enough for education to produce individuals who can read, write, and count. And education must be transformative and bring shared values to life, helping people to forge more just, peaceful, tolerant, and inclusive societies. It must give people understanding and skills and values they need to cooperate in resolving the interconnected challenges of the 21st century. Target 4.7 of the SDG is the key to achieving Agenda 2030. Transformative education equips us to better respond to the global challenges and help us set us on the path towards a sustainable and resilient recovery. But how is transformative education different? So in 2011, Springer showed that this table describes the depth of a learning experience, in which the first order of learning aims to increase efficiency, knowledge, and making the learner realize how to do things better. The second order of learning goes so deep as to recognize the paradigm we are living in, and it intends to examine assumptions and, to put it bluntly, do better things. And learning in the third order, which goes by the name of epistemic learning, is concerned with the acquisition of knowledge itself and aspires to help the learners to see things differently. And it is the type of learning that is transformative and consequently leads to a paradigm change. And what are the key elements in order of us to achieve transformative education? The future learning ecosystem reflects a transformation away from the disconnected episodic experiences and towards a curated continuum of lifelong learning tailored to individuals and delivered across diverse locations, media, and period of time. This will pivot our systems and society to make a way from formal, detached education and training towards experiential, personalized, and interconnected journeys. So what are the critical areas within which we look at the transformation? So an integrated, technologically enabled learning architecture that unlocks the anticipated transformation in learning. Technology amplifies both good and bad teaching, but we must not lose sight of the fact that quality teaching is and will remain the center of the learning process. Learning designers will need to understand how to differentially apply diverse technologies, blend disparate delivery of modalities into holistic experiences, build in and apply learning analytics, balance, and practical and collective across the diverse communities who actively contribute to the realization of transformative education. The commitment achievement of the future learning ecosystems requires collective coordination across diverse communities of all stakeholders who actively contribute to the realization of that we call transformative education. The governance, in terms of governance, the governance bodies along with actual government, key performers within the ecosystem will inform policies for the future learning ecosystems. And in terms of policy, the future learning ecosystem will affect us all, and in turn, we can each shape and contribute to it. So these are the 6 critical areas, and all of this must align. And we say that learning is a journey and not a destination. So to attain an effective human infrastructure, we say that partnership is the answer, because we need to build the network of like-minded people so that the transformative or the creation of transformative education, it requires a very close cooperation between schools, the industry, and authorities. That is the starting point. However, it is not enough. We also need these networks of like-minded people, the clusters who are startups and teachers, researchers, and educators from basic education to higher education, as well as vocational education, the parents, business leaders, artists, learners who can experiment with new ways of learning and new ways of teaching. And of course, we need leadership from policy makers. In that report from the 2015 Global Education Industry Summit, we need also the following to develop the powerful, purposeful networks that connect the right people and the right organization. So we need advancements in technology to create connectivity and access across the globe. We need powerful and less expensive devices, interoperability standards, APIs, single sign-ons, platforms, and more. These are technical and engineering solutions. We need researchers, neuroscientists, and cognitive scientists, and other fields of study to improve our understanding of how people learn. And we need to support for research development, product testing, methods and protocols, learning analytics, and data mining. We need entrepreneurs and designers and startups to create and pursue solutions to challenges, both grand and small. We also need teachers and teacher teams to provide deep insights into pedagogy, the best ways to manage group of students, the methods of engagement and motivation, ways to engage students with relevant and powerful problem solving. The teachers design the curriculum, new assignments, and share insights into evolving pedagogy. We need government and policymakers to ensure laws, regulations, and policies that keep our rights on the public good, ensure safety and security, and promote rather than hinder innovation. So we need to think together in order to shape the future that we want. And we want to achieve education that heals, repairs, repurposes, and renews. So these are the things that we look at having that ecosystem that really works to transform the kind of education that we need. With all of that, I'd like to say thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc Willie, Yusek. Maraming salamat for walking us through the VOCAD world, no? And how we will, of course, live and thrive in it. And as you said, you know, world really getting smaller, however, getting more complex. And with that, of course, the different needs for teaching and learning, and of course, going to transformative education from being conformative to reformative and ultimately transformative. Thank you. Thank you very much for those insights.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to all. I'd like to really express this sincerest thanks for being part of this activity. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And of course, thank you very much for joining us as well. And so now we go to the second guest speaker that we have, and moving from that talk of Dr. Willie, we now go to Jamie METZL, who is a leading technology and geopolitical expert, a science fiction novelist, faculty member of Singularity University Exponential Medicine, and senior fellow of the Atlantic Council. He was appointed in 2019 to the World Health Organization Expert Advisory Committee on Human Genome Editing. Jamie previously served in the U.S. National Security Council, State Department, and Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and with the United Nations in Cambodia. Jamie appears regularly on national and international media discussing global issues, and his syndicated columns and other writing are featured in publications around the world. He's the author of a history of the Cambodian genocide, the historical novel The Depths of the Sea, and the genetic sci-fi thrillers Genesis Code and Eternal Sonata, and the recent bestseller Hacking Darwin, Genetic Engineering and the Future of Humanity. An avid Ironman triathlete and ultra marathoner, J.B. Holtz, a PhD from Oxford, a law degree from Harvard Law School, and is a graduate of Brown University. Dr. Jamie is the man behind the phenomenal success of One Shared World, a global movement now present in more than 120 countries, where the Philippine chapter is one of the pioneer global chapters, espousing the values and principles of interdependence as a strategic way to address the common concerns of our one humanity and one ecosystem for a better future for our future generations, which is also the very essence of our Academe, Alumni, Industry, and Government AAIG Summit 2021. So please welcome Dr. Jamie METZL.
Thank you so much. It's really my tremendous pleasure to be here with all of you. We're kind of here, virtually here. Philippines is a country that's very dear to my heart. And the topic that we're discussing here today, the transformation of education, is absolutely at the very, very core of building a safer and better future for everyone. As was just mentioned, I'm the founder and chair of One Shared World. We are a global movement of people all around the world. And Dean Henry Tenedero and the amazing friends in our One Shared World Philippine chapter are teaching us things every day about how we can come together to address not just the many challenges we face, which are very clear, but the great opportunities that these amazing transformations in our communications and other technologies afford us. So thank you so much for inviting me to join you, and inviting me to join you to talk about something that's so important as the transformation of education. Because what is education at its core, but the realization of our potential as individuals, as communities, and as humans. As was mentioned, the author of the book Hacking Darwin, Genetic Engineering and the Future of Humanity. I'm a member of the World Health Organization Expert Committee on Human Genome Editing. And there is no doubt that as we unlock the secrets of genetic code, we are learning more and more about how much of our identity is coded in our genetics. And that certainly is true. But it is also true that our lives are in many ways far more determined by our cultural inheritance than even by our genetic inheritance. Our biology is fundamentally similar to the biology of our ancestors tens or hundreds of thousands of years ago. But our lives are radically and dramatically different, not because of our biology, but because of our cultural inheritance. And we need to recognize that that cultural inheritance is something that is very precious. And the way that we maintain it, the way that we grow it, is generation upon generation, building our foundation of knowledge, and then doing everything we can, both to pass that knowledge to future generations, and to give those generations the tools that they require and will be able to use to grow the foundation of that education even further. That's why your work is so important. That's why our mission together here is so important. And I want to put this moment in history in some context. Just 100 years ago, there were about 2 billion people alive on Earth with only a 20% literacy rate. That means about 400 million people had the opportunity to participate in many ways in the world of shared knowledge, at least shared beyond our smallest communities. Today, we're approaching 8 million people with an 85% literacy rate. That means around 6.5 billion people have access to the world of shared knowledge. And because we are all networked, it means that nobody has to solve a problem that's already been solved. Our ancestors living in different parts of the world had access to different technologies, some of the era-defining technologies like copper, like iron. The difference was thousands of years across civilizations. And that meant for thousands of years, people in various parts of the world were solving problems that had already been solved at some other time in some other place. Today, because we have so many people and because we have networked knowledge systems, everybody gets to wake up and solve a problem that has not yet been solved. And our technologies are allowing us to enter an era of super convergence. It's not just that we have this massive computing power, as was shown in the slide of the previous speaker. It's that our computer revolution is unlocking a machine learning and AI revolution, and that is unleashing a genetics and biotechnology revolution. And then with the tools of that revolution, we are learning about the designs of nature that are circling back and helping us create new models of computer chips. And everything it goes around and around. So this super convergence of technologies is accelerating the rate of change. And that means that in a world of exponential change, when we look to historical experience to understand how quickly things are changing and will change, we are actually too conservative. Our brains give us too conservative information. And so to understand where we're heading, we all in many ways need to think like futurists. We need to think like science fiction writers. And this moment creates tremendous opportunities. It creates tremendous opportunities to solve problems that have never been solved before. The new mRNA vaccines that more and more people around the world are accessing are a case in point. It took only 48 hours from when the sequenced genome of the SARS-CoV-2 virus was made available to when the formula was created through a computer-generated model by Moderna that is exactly the same as the formula of the Moderna mRNA vaccine. It was based on 30 years of work, but again, it was based on these super converging technologies that made that possible. And we're going to see those kinds of miraculous changes. And if we have the right values, these technologies have the potential to help everybody all around the world unlock and unleash our greatest potential, because for we as humans, that is what we have. And it's an incredibly exciting moment to be alive. But it's also an incredibly frightening moment to be alive, because these technologies are allowing humans to do harm at scale. We're about to have the Glasgow COP26 meetings where we're going to be discussing the challenges of climate change. And right now, it's very clear that humans are driving climate change, but humans don't have an answer to the climate change that we are driving. Right now, we live in a world where there's a pandemic that has killed, depending on what numbers you accept, but according to The Economist, 15 million people are dead unnecessarily. And as some of you may know, it's my belief that there's a very real possibility that this pandemic stems from an accidental lab incident in Wuhan, where Chinese scientists, if this is the case, were actually trying to develop vaccines and treatments for exactly this kind of experience that has been unleashed. Across the board, we see many examples of human problems going to scale because our reach and power of humans has reached a global level. That's the story of climate change. That's the story of potentially pandemics, particularly in the age of synthetic biology. That's the story of proliferating nuclear weapons. And one of the reasons why I and we created One Shared World is that with these increasing powers, we need to recognize that human beings face an existential threat. And that threat is based on our global collective action problem. This was what I said in the earliest days of the pandemic last year, that if we solve the COVID-19 pandemic, but don't solve the broader issue of pandemics. We'll get through this, and then we'll have the next pandemic and the next one. And again, in an age of synthetic biology, these pandemics have the potential to be far more dangerous and deadly than this one. But if we solve the broad issue of pandemics, but don't solve climate change, we will be jumping out of the frying pan and literally into the fire with ecosystem collapses in our oceans and elsewhere. And even if we should rally and solve climate change, but we don't address other global existential issues like proliferating nuclear weapons, what difference does it make if we protect our climate, if we end up wiping ourselves out through nuclear war? And the core through line here is this mismatch between our global collective problems, which are our greatest problems, and our inability to solve or address that same category of global collective action problems. And that's why we together, One Shared World, as was mentioned, people in 120 countries are coming together to demand that our leaders do a better job of balancing our narrow interests as citizens, as corporations, as countries, with our broader interests as humans sharing the same planet. And that brings me back to this issue, the core issue of education, because the only way that we are going to solve these problems is with empowered global publics around the world. And the only way those publics can be empowered is if we have highly functioning educational systems that give people the tools, not just to learn, which is critically important, but to learn, to engage, to be citizens of their countries, to be informed citizens of the world. Because this rate of change is happening so rapidly, the only skill worth learning is how to learn, how to be wise, how to apply our most cherished values to our greatest challenges, how to apply our most sacred values to guide the application of our increasingly godlike technologies. And that's why the work that you all are doing is so critically important. Yes, we have a genetic future. Yes, we have all kinds of ways that we're despoiling the planet, making all kinds of problems that at times seem insurmountable. But our greatest asset is our young people, and their greatest asset is their minds. And so I applaud you for the critically important work that you are doing to unlock the greatest power in the universe, which is the power of the creativity of young people and all humans. Thank you so much, and let me stop there.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jamie. And yes, that was quite an eye-opening talk from you, talking about the secrets of genetic code, which reminds me of the saying that truly we did not start the fire. We did that, but we keep it burning. And that's very, very important in what you said, especially in the shared knowledge and in a network world. You know, we need to keep this going and bring it to the super convergence that you mentioned, and bringing it to exponential change, and the need to think really futuristic at this time because of the need to have an empowered global publics. That's very important in order, of course, to have, of course, the transformative education of our youth. And as you said, this will unlock and unleash our greatest potential. So thank you, Dr. Jamie, for those sharings and truly giving us a look-see, not only of what we had in the past, what we have now, but more importantly, the needs that we have to look out for in the future, thinking really futuristic about it all. Thank you. Thank you. And now we proceed to our third guest. Yes, and our third guest is another Dr. Dr. J. ADALEM, and he is involved in many things, but really very importantly in education and sports, and of course in leadership. And he has we will be talking about an important topic as well this morning. And he is a medical doctor, Dr. J, and is also a product, our own product, of course, here at UST High School and the UST MedTech Department. And he is part of the illustrious family that owns the St. Clair College and an avid champion of the small and medium-sized private schools around the country, exemplifying various education programs anchored on the essence of the Academe, Alumni, Industry, and Government, or AAIG, collaboration for inclusive and transformative success. So without much further ado, please welcome Doc J. ADALEM.
Thank you po. Thank you. First of all, allow me to congratulate the organizers of this timely and relevant webinar series on transformational education. The UST Alumni Association and the Graduate School Center for Continuing Professional Education and Development. But let me start my presentation by saying that I am a proud Tomasian. UST Education High School Batch 1987 and UST Medical Technology Graduate Batch of 1991. I am a medical doctor, but right now I am immersed in running the family-owned school, St. Clair College of Caloocan, as Vice President for Administration from 1997 to 2019, and Vice President for Finance from 2019 to this day. St. Clair College of Caloocan, a progressive school located in North Caloocan City. Majority of our students from basic education to tertiary levels are coming from depressed communities. The two of the most marginalized barangays in the whole country, namely Barangay Bagong Silang and Barangay Camarin. Most of our students can only dream of going to the so-called big schools, yet they carry within them the same dreams and aspirations of every Filipino youth. St. Clair College is a founding institution of the Caloocan Private Schools Association, or CAPRIS, and a prime mover in the Federation of Association of Private Schools Administrators, or FAPSA, with more than 15,000 member schools around the country. Let me present to you the woes and concerns of the one sector in Philippine education. The sorry state of our small and medium-sized private schools in the Philippines is one for the books, especially during this time of pandemic. Record shows that last school year, almost 1,000 small, medium-sized private schools around the country closed operations, not because the owners no longer believe in the visions and missions for which their school were founded, but they had to close operations to save on expenses because of severe impact of the pandemic. We have even seen in new countless numbers of teachers resulting to selling just to make both ends and meet their family needs. But despite these pathetic experiences, we in the small and medium-sized private schools remain steadfast to thrive, not just survive, to strengthen the fabrics of our avowed mission and vision that aim to produce quality and productive graduates even in the midst of this pandemic. Toward this end, we manifest our collective appreciation to the organizers of this webinar series in forging strategic pathways for our academe, alumni, industry, and government to come together for a common good, a desire to create transformative and transforming educators in our midst. Especially, we manifest the following belief statements to the ideals as expressed in AAIG's manifestation of solidarity from the various education stakeholders. From the ranks of school owners, we believe the task of transforming Philippine education or educational system, for that matter, is a long and tedious process. Educators born, bred, and raised within the socio-cultural milieu of the system will find it hard to let go of old habits, particularly if over time they have proven to produce the results that we want. But we remain with one heart one head and one hand in perpetuating the gift of perpetual learning. From the ranks of the school administrators, which we belong, we believe in an authentic education reform, renewal and transformation to be meaningful, sustainable. Education must be served society as an instrument for fostering the creation, advancement, and dissemination of education, and that the triple goals of equity, relevance, and excellence must prevail in policy making, planning, and practice. On the ranks of our teachers, we believe in the importance in inculcating in our learners the values and principles of life skills for life success, to nurture our learners' compassionate heart, not just their thinking and mind, and develop soft essential skills, not just academic skills. From the ranks of our students, we believe that every child has genius potentials in more ways than one, that the traditional IQ that we know is a limiting metric in measuring one's intelligence. For intelligence, as we know, by now is a many splendor thing. From the ranks of our parents, we believe that while we're not enjoying the beauty of face-to-face classroom learning due to the pandemic, we must maximize the benefits of heart-to-heart home learning, understanding fully that technology is a mere handmaiden of civilization, that no amount of technology can substitute for parenting. From the ranks of our non-teaching personnel and all those involved in education, we believe that all those concerned in education, the school owners, school leaders and managers, teachers, psychologists, lawmakers, policymakers, government, and private educational institutions must pour a concerted and continuing efforts into a review and reformulation of the educational system even beyond Industry 4.0. And finally, we collectively believe that transformative education is a matter of human heart, that quality education through AAIG to 2021 is the bridge we must build for our children. This is the bridge we shall use to cross over life beyond the pandemic. Let this be our task today, our project, our dream, our lasting heritage to our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc J. Thank you for those thoughts. And yes, those are very important in today's world because, as you said, you know, even before we talk of the transformative education, we must begin charity at home, and that is looking after. And we're glad that you are the champion for the small and medium-sized private schools, and making sure that we, of course, take care of them, taking care of the sector, not only of the schools, of the parents, of the students, but of the entire system for us to achieve the various education programs that we are looking forward. And as you said, you know, sustainability is really key. We must make them sustainable in order to support the perpetual learning, as you have said, that we need, and that is in preparation for the life after the pandemic. So thank you, Doc J, for those sharings. And with that, we go to the next speaker for this morning. And yes, and with that, we go to the next speaker. And moving on, of course, we have a recording from him. We know that he has recently filed his certificate of candidacy, and so he is moving really on warp speed, being everywhere. But he can be with us, of course, this morning as he recorded this message. But let me introduce him to you. Dr. Carl BALITA is, of course, a proud Thomasian alumnus and the current president of the UST Nursing Alumni Association. Known for his generosity and selfless sense of community engagement and leadership, Dr. Carl epitomizes what it means to be a true advocate of the intrinsic role of the academe alumni industry and Government, or AAIG, for transformative nation building and people development. As a recent executive program in international management graduate at Stanford University and National University of Singapore, receiving the highest honors among 50 top executives from all over the world. He holds the 3 professional licenses, a master's degree, and 2 doctoral degrees in humanities and education, and is currently finishing his 3rd doctoral degree. The man behind the biggest review center in the country, the Dr. Carl E. BALITA Review Center, or CBRC. CBRC has more than 117 branches in all major cities nationwide, and with international expansions in the United Arab Emirates, Hong Kong, and the ASEAN region. CBRC has been certified as a super brand, and it has the distinction of being the first ISO 9001:2015 certified business of its kind. Further, it dominated the review industry by winning most of the prestigious awards in the Philippine Franchise Association's Franchise Excellence Awards in 2017 and 2019. Dr. Carl is a movie and record producer. He owns Mahalta Resort and Convention Center, as well as the Pedagogy Learning Center. He is the chairman of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, PCCI, in Quezon City, and currently its national chairman for human resource development. He is a best-selling author of various reviewers, including Prosperity and Entrepreneur in 12 Days, and a Hall of Fame awardee as host of ABS-CBN DCMM's Radio Negosyo for 18 years now. In the field of business, he has been awarded as the Asia CEO Entrepreneur of the Year, Circle of Excellence, for 2 consecutive years. In 2018, he was one of the outstanding professional awardees. He is a fellow of the Royal Institution of Entrepreneurs in Singapore. Further, he was a finalist in the Asia Pacific Young Entrepreneur Awards, a science ambassador of the DOST, and a recipient of the Total Awards from UST, the highest award conferred by the University of Santo Tomas to its alumni. He was conferred the Mahalta Award Entrepreneur by his home province, Oriental Mindoro. In addition, he is an international speaker, professor of business and family man, married to pediatrician, with whom he has 4 kids. Dubbed as the entrepreneur guru and the ultimate reviewer, please welcome Dr. Carl E. BALITA.
Good day, everyone. Greetings of a peaceful, prosperous, and of course, healthy day to all of you. I'd like to congratulate the UST Alumni Association and this powerful committee behind the Academe, Alumni, and Industry Government Collaboration Project, which brings together the 4 major pillars of the educational system to transform it towards a better normal, not just the new normal. And the National Multisectoral Summit for Educational Transformation, with the theme for this part, towards a robust ecosystem for transformative education. I'm very happy to be here, and hopefully, I represent the Academe, I represent the alumni, I represent the industry as well, and hopefully soon I will be able to represent government somehow to make a difference further. I have prepared these slides for you, and I always get invited to speak about transformational leadership. And whenever I get invited for this, I can't help but present to them that the transformative leadership is all about change. And change could come to us through a revolution, which would be very bloody, highly resisted, or we can use evolution, which will probably take forever. And that's the result we may be able to witness beyond our lifetime. And of course, the most important of them all is the transformation. A transformation which is from within and looking at it in a holistic point of view. Educational transformation, I'd like to first quote the World Economic Forum, who in 2020 predicted that there are 3 ways that COVID-19 would reshape education. And the first prediction they made is that education will be nudged and pushed to change, and this could lead to surprising innovation. Indeed, things will never be the same again, and we're looking forward to this surprising innovation. The second one is very important. They predict, the World Economic Forum predicted that the public and private educational partnership could grow in an important stage of our transformation. And lastly, this is a little threatening because this is where they predicted that the digital divide could actually widen. And furthermore, they predicted that the less affluent and digitally savvy individuals, families are, the further their students are left behind. When classes transition online, these children lose out because of the cost of digital devices and data plan. And this is actually happening. The digital divide is felt already. And there's a warning, or there is an insight that unless access costs decrease and quality of access increase in all countries, the gap of education or educational quality and thus socioeconomic equality will be further exacerbated. The digital divide, according to them, could become more extreme if educational access is dictated by access to the latest technology. I'd like to quote this because I'd like to begin with how they see it from that side of the world, from a macro level. And there's also some insights coming from UNESCO, and I'd like to present it to you. In the Education in the Post-COVID World, they presented 9 ideas for public action, which could actually trigger the appreciation of that ecosystem we're talking about. The 9 ideas, it begins with number 1, commit to strengthen education as a common good. And that's why this becomes a common good, not only of government and government agencies related to education, but also industry, like what I represent from the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The second is expand the definition of the right to education so that it addresses the importance of connectivity and access to knowledge and information. There's no problem with availability, but the problem really is the access and the connectivity. Value the teaching profession and teacher collaboration. It puts the teacher in the center stage once more. And number 4, promote student, youth, and children's participation and rights. And number 5, protect the social spaces provided by school as we transform education. There's that social space being mentioned by the UNESCO. Another one is to make free and open source technologies available to teachers and students. There is an emphasis for free and open source technologies. This is really what's happening right now. The Industry 4.0, which initially served as the biggest threat of a disruption prior to the pandemic disruption, already made available free and open source technologies. It's just a matter of the teachers and the students optimizing its use. Number 7, ensure scientific literacy within the curriculum, because the health condition brought about by this pandemic and the vaccinology and all those approaches we're having would really challenge our science literacy. And mind you, this is not going to be the last pandemic that we may witness. In fact, protect domestic and international financing of public education. I'll talk more about this in a little while. And of course, lastly, is advance global solidarity to end the current level of inequality. And which is why this AAIG summit or collaboration is very ideal, because this is trying to build the solidarity so that we can end the inequality. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry launched a task force. We call it the Education Task Force. And this was because in 2020, in October 2020, I wrote in my column in the Business Mirror, I challenged the business sector and explained why business sector should push for EDCOM 4.0. At the time, I thought we would still have time for the private sector to initiate or to call or to pressure the government to engage in EDCOM 4.0. This happened in 2020. If you would like to look into this article, you may want to research a Business Mirror, Carl BALITA, and put EDCOM, and this article would appear. I narrated here the constitutional basis of education, the budget we're giving education, and some performances of our students in international tests, which I don't want to talk about anymore, because the business sector then in April 28, 2021, called and launched the ETF. As you may see, we have the likes of Nilo Rosas, we have the likes of Ma'am Irene from TESDA, the president of Philippine Normal University, Dr. Tuga, and many others, of course, under the leadership of Dr. Phoenix, who was also your speaker in one of the AAIG session we had. Now, in April 28, 2021, we launched this, and for the past months, we have been coming up with recommendations for innovations in Philippine education. And we looked into the quality model of the structure, the process, and the outcome. I'm a quality practitioner, my company being an ISO certified company. I created this framework so that we can look into the structure, the processes, and the outcomes of education. And here is where the areas of development were defined. Of course, the outcomes would look into the Philippine qualifications and the learning outcomes. The process would look into the curriculum and instruction and the competencies of teachers and educational leaders. And lastly, of course, the structure would like to look into institutional and policy reforms in education. I presented this, of course, creatively. I created it such that we will develop the PCCI framework in what we see as the task force education development model. All right, it looks into first the Philippine qualification and the learning outcomes, the curriculum and instruction, the competencies of teachers and educational leaders, and the institutional policies for reform. And we looked into who is a learned, trained, and educated Filipino on that side for the future, the country, and the world. Then after that, what to teach and how to teach learner in the learning environments became the challenge of the curriculum and instruction. And who will teach and lead learning? That's on the third quadrant that we call. And lastly, the educational system, so that we see it in a whole ecosystem. Today, I'll be presenting some of the recommendations. Some of them are my own legislative agenda. As you may have known, or as you may have heard, I'm taking this courage to stand up for education, for health, and for micro business, and I'm running for the Senate. And I'll be presenting to you some of my legislative agenda. First of all, on the outcome, learning to learn became a challenge, and managing one's own learning becomes a must be a basic competence. The WHO, the UNESCO gave us the learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, and learning to live together. But eventually, the learning to learn became a very basic competence, and the ability of the person to manage own learning becomes an important element. Here is where the lifelong learning is born, and the philosophy or the wish of every Filipino family is na makatapos should be translated and should be transformed into continuous learning. I would always be very concerned when professionals themselves right now would propose that if ever I win, I should abolish the CPD. Of course, as a responsible professional, my response would always be continuing professional development is our responsibility. We just have to look into some systems to consider formal, non-formal, and informal sources, so that I think the only problem they have of the CPD, for example, is the cost. And this is why they want to give up on the lifelong learning challenge of being a professional, because it becomes too costly. So it's really a matter of creativity and innovation to make it happen. Now, this is according to McKinsey, who conducted a study. There is a new set of foundational skills, and these are the following. The first one is a person in the future, for the future, should be able to add value beyond automated systems and intelligent machines. Also, everyone in the future should be able to operate in a digital environment. And lastly, that the person of the future should be able to continually adapt to new ways of working and to new occupations. We will soon be working in industries that are not known to us now. And we are not educating our students, our learners for the present, but we're educating them for the future, which is a VUCA world. Currently, this is already a VUCA world, and the future is even a VUCA with an H. VUCA is We all know about it. Probably it's the volatility, it's the uncertainty, complexity, and the ambiguity. And there is an added letter, which is H, hostile, according to how we have experienced this pandemic. But as you know, as a positive mindset educator and advocate, I don't want to remember VUCA for those translation. But I want, if indeed there is volatility, don't you think that we should focus on the vision? If you really think that the world is full of uncertainty, don't you think that we should, endeavor to understanding? If indeed the world is so complex, don't you think that we should be challenged to find its clarity? And if indeed the world is ambiguous, don't you think that we should endeavor for agility? And the magic word in agility is actually collaboration. And isn't it that if the world is really hostile now, then don't you think that we should anchor ourselves to our humanity? So I'm proposing a different meaning for VUCA and a different new set of foundational skills that even Toffler said that the literacy of the future is that our ability to read and write, but our ability to learn, relearn, and unlearn. Now, the 56 deltas across 13 skills group and 4 categories were identified already by McKinsey related to this research, okay, which considered the industry input into what kind of competencies of people are we looking for in the future. And cognitive is not memory anymore, but it's critical thinking, it's planning and ways of working, it's mental flexibility, it's communication on the cognitive level. On the interpersonal level, this is mobilizing systems thinking, developing relationships, and teamwork and effectiveness. And about self-leadership, it's about me. It's my ability to manage myself. It's self-leadership, which is anchored on self-awareness and self-management, entrepreneurship, which is my favorite, and goal achievement. And lastly, in the 4th quadrant, you would find, or 4th category, you could find here digital competency. It's the digital fluency and citizenship. There is such a thing as digital citizenship. Software use and development. It's your ability to use and develop and understanding the digital systems. The IQ that shifted to the EQ, that shifted to the AQ, and shifted to the SQ has now shifted into the DQ, or digital intelligence. Now, also putting the spotlight on the most important person, which is the teacher. Of course, we have to realize that our teachers went through a pre-service, then when they get employed into an in-service, to develop the quality teacher that they could be. But let's take a look at some PRC report and see how it works. Technology will never replace a great teacher. And therefore, improving teacher quality becomes of supreme importance for long-term and sustainable nation building. Nation building, one teacher at a time, and in that classroom, one learner at a time. Now, if we would look at our current scenario, there are 1 million teachers, about 800,000 in the public education system, and 24 million learners and growing. So this shows to us that there will be a gap or a higher demand for teachers, even as we go into the digital or blended or flexible or omni-model models of learning. I'd like to present to you that in other countries, board exams are not given anymore, like Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, Netherlands, and Singapore. As you would see, the second green circle there, certification is it's low or no stake anymore for them. But take a look at what is also in secret at the left side is their very high stake on entry of teacher education program. So they may have no board exam, but they have very strict admission and retention. Now, if we're looking into this for the future, I think we really have to reinvent our our pre-service teacher education. And look at this board examinees in the PRC in 2018, prior to the onset of the pandemic. There were a total of 353,000 takers, okay, of the LEP, all right, followed by criminology, followed by nursing, civil engineering, and accountancy. Okay, this is the 2018 report. So it's 1/3 of a million people taking the LEP. And as you may want to see it, in the general, among all those who took the board exam, the average passing is 38%, 38.7%. And if you would see the passing history of the licensure exam for teachers, the blue lines represents the number of takers, and the orange line represents the passer. And I'd like to tell you that the average, as you can see, that the passing rate is rather really low. And if I may just zoom into it, okay, the most recent is 36. There was even a time that there was 19% passing, and the highest recorded over the past how many years was actually 37.7%. So therefore, even as we have a rich supply of teachers, we would note that only about 35 or 30-something% of them will make it in the board. About 3 to 4 out of all those who take will actually get the license. And the DepEd, of course, would have a very beautiful process of hiring and of retaining. Okay, they have a criteria, but the ETF made an observation that the criteria for ranking, some are rather highly subjective rather than objective, and that also needs to be revisited so that we can really get the best teachers. I have no doubt that there is a good supply of teachers, but we were wondering why out of the total teaching positions of 847,000, there is a 41,000 unfilled position. This is as of April 2020. If indeed there is a good supply of teachers, why should there be a 41,000 unfilled position at that point? Maybe they aren't coming, or maybe they'll get there soon. But the point is, this attributes to, there's an implication here. If these remain unfilled, of course, there will be a higher teacher-learner ratio, number one. And number two, because of the lack of other personnel, there is a possibility that the teacher will be doing the administrative jobs rather than just the teaching jobs. So there will always be an implication. So if indeed the positions are available anyway, the recommendation will be to maximize and optimize this plantilla position. Now, are the teachers happy? Generally in the world, the teachers' motivating factor is the teacher autonomy, their ability to do what they need to do on their own as professional. The professional factors, the working environment, the intrinsic value of becoming a teacher, and the extrinsic value that they get for the image that they make out of the teachers. Okay, I also did a study, and it's not in this presentation, but we made a study that many of us wanted to become teachers when we were young, but changed it as we get older. But those who took up education, at least 70 or to 80% of them did not regret that they took up education, and they pursued their dream to become teachers. Okay, the working environment, however, could be a demotivating factor, and the teacher autonomy can also be a demotivating factor, as well as the student attitude is found out to be, by research, to be demotivating. And there's a, and you know, this is something that I want to take very serious discussion. Take note that a teacher gets salary grade 11, and in 2019 there is sorry, the other one is 2023, the last one. So it will be given in 4 tranches. Currently, 2021, their salary is the entry teachers. Okay, the entry salary of teachers is 23,800. It becomes 27 in 2023. Okay, now teachers studied for 4 years. They took the board exam, and then that's where they land. The point here is, how will we be able to attract the best and the brightest if the public knows that the teachers are not paid well? Well, for a professional to be getting this amount on a monthly basis, you would know that probably they'd rather sell fishbowl, because the fishbowl vendor will probably earn more. Okay, but to compare this with nurses, nurses struggled so long. The second picture indicates to you the salary of nurses in 2020, in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Okay, because nurses are getting salary grade 15. Okay, and of course, this is not covered by the salary standardization law, but the policemen are getting 29,600 pesos. Okay, probably this explains why there are more people who want to be policemen or nurses rather than become teachers. So unless we do something to attract the best and the brightest with the kind of life that they'll get out of the profession, maybe we'll not be able to really attract them to the profession. I also would like to present to you that assuming the salary now is 24,500 for teachers, in Thailand, a Filipino teacher is getting 30,000 pesos at least. Okay, that's why there are so many Filipinos who are going to Thailand. And again, to compare the 24,000 salary of teachers in the Philippines, I'd like to compare it with domestic helper in Hong Kong, who are receiving 37,000 pesos, including their meal allowance. And of course, without the pressure of having to, to go to put on a makeup, to wear their uniform and so on. This explains to us why many of the graduate of education would be found to be domestic helpers in Hong Kong, okay, for some economic and practical reasons. Well, one of the good things that happened in our ecosystem of education to transform it is the Philippine qualifications framework, which is our response to the ASEAN qualification reference framework related to the mutual recognition arrangement. Okay, but this was reviewed recently by the World Bank in 2021, 2022. Just recently, they realized that the activities of the Philippine Qualification Council, okay, and the working groups related to it have not been fully functional yet. In fact, the composition is not yet finalized. And you will agree with me, the public awareness of PQF is very low. And it is not something that they have presented to the private sector, especially to that sector that will recognize, okay, who will recognize the levels or the qualification, which is actually the business sector or the employment sector. And there is a limited alignment and revision of existing curricula and qualification standards. So this is a big work in progress, because this actually gives us a snapshot of that ecosystem from basic education to technical education and skills development and the higher education. You would also notice here that there's a question if indeed the grade 12 is part of the levels in the PQF. And you would notice that the lines are always upward. It does not consider the horizontal integration of qualification. And the challenges, therefore, is that the PQF descriptors have, by 3 domains, do not progress uniformly across all levels. And there is lack of clarity in the newly added senior high school TVL track in the PQF level, the TechVoc track, which was the intention of the of that entrepreneurial exit in the K-12 and that employability concept of the K-12. And the credit transfer system based on clear standards and qualification really needs to be considered strongly. And the usefulness of PQF has not been presented to the private sector yet. These are some observations, and that's why one of the important thing is for us to recognize that the learning outcomes based education will really have to be not only talked about or learned about, but really it has to be something that we execute. The learning outcomes being the metrics of referencing to the AQRF. They are the fundamentals and the levels assigned to them. The thing is, unless we are authentic in our being outcomes based in our education, then we're losing the chance to even talk about the metrics of the referencing. And that's why our proposal in the educational task force is there should be a common OBE workshop for the technical experts of TESDA, CHED, and even the regulatory boards, because we have noticed that the a lot of our graduates failed the board exam not because they did not learn, but because there's a gap with the competencies that were developed out of the tertiary education to the professional standards, dictated by the future employers or the regulatory boards. So there has to be some alignment, and this is our proposal. There is also, you might want to pursue and appreciate more the Philippine credit transfer system, which should support lifelong learning, should be outcomes-based, learner-centered, quality assured, which is also very important, and that which supports institutional autonomy, supports academic freedom, and would promote cooperation. We should zoom in to the Philippine credit transfer system if we really want the qualifications framework to work, so that our professionals would have a better alignment with the rest of the world. There is a need to optimize the Republic Act 11-2030, which is the Tulong Trabajo, which actually establishes the Philippine Labor Force and Competencies Competitiveness Program and the Tulong Trabajo Fund. This is beautiful because this applies to those who are not employed or not in education or training, but wants to improve their competencies. And this is where the ecosystem really works. Okay, those who are working, who are already employed, but may need additional skills and competencies, may go back to school or may go back to training and continue in the pursuit of their lifelong learning skills, lifelong learning responsibility, and they become more capable of and productive. Okay, I'd like to present a concept of the individual learning accounts, which may have been adopted overseas, but this provides for funds made available to individuals to purchase training. The beauty of this is it will be a demand-led approach, and therefore this supports the training relevance and responsiveness for the employee, for example, because this is a fund which will be accessed so that the person improves with what he or she does. And this is the individual learning accounts. This is something we want to pursue. I'm looking at how it can be integrated into some of the existing policies or create even policies in the future. I would like to propose, I mixed it up with my own and with that of the ETF, some legislative agenda that I look forward into pushing and advocating. The first one is the law institutionalizing the nutrition and feeding program. As a health professional that I am, by the way, I'm a nurse, I'm a midwife, I'm a licensed professional teacher, and doctor of humanities and doctor of education. I become very concerned about kahit paanong ganda ng curriculum mo at kahit paanong galing ng guro mo, kung gutom ang batang tinuturuan mo, malamang wala siyang matututunan. So this is where we can actually engage the PTCA, the local government, being part of the school board and some NGOs, NGOs, and the business sector, but it has to be institutionalized. And there should be a fund for this, and that fund should access the locally produced agricultural products for the nutrition of the undernourished, or maybe even all the children from grade 1 to grade 3, the formative years. This is important because this will also, prime up the agricultural sector of the area. So, it's bringing the funds so that the agricultural sector could benefit, and in the end, the children move out of malnutrition. Of course, the Teacher Salary Protection Act, this should limit the market distortion because they always compare the salary of the public and the private, the public being able to pay more than the private school, and that's why some of the teachers in the private school are now moving to public school, which is not a good idea. And that's why there should be a regional average, and the measure should be, there should be some sort of a measure so that a subsidy may be provided to reduce the gap between the two sectors. And this is related to another legislation that I'm intending to offer, and that is the First is a law creating a targeted portable educational subsidy. This is where, I don't want to use the word voucher because the voucher has been burned in our system, but it's a portable educational subsidy where a student in anywhere may get that subsidy to be able to transfer and access the course that they want from other educational institution, be it in basic education or in higher education. But it has to be portable, something you can carry from being in a state university or state college or government school to private school. In doing so, there will be greater equality and inclusion. And this follows the concept of funding follows the student concept, where the fund follows the student instead of the student finds the fund. You see? And in this way, you'll be able also to help the private school survive. Okay? Of course, there should be a law defining and operationalizing the complementarity in public and private education. Even our Constitution, in this specific article and section, provides that the private and public education should complement each other. But in reality, they're actually competing. But we have to strengthen the one system, two sector. In other words, it's not competition, but co-opetition. So it can be designed as that. I will also be proposing a law establishing an AI-driven labor market and human capital development or observatory, so that, as parents, as teachers, as policymakers, even as students, as regulators, as employer, we will be able to see what will be the current demand and what will be the future demand, so that we don't make oversupply in one area. And it's easy to do now because of artificial intelligence that's available for us. And the law upholding the academic freedom of students through free parental choice of education. I mean, if academic freedom is given to institutions and teachers, I think academic freedom may also be given to the parents and the students, so that they can pursue their course. And I think lastly, we have to have a law to incentivize education as a social and economic driver. Because unless we see education as a social and economic driver, we will not be able to invest well on it, and we may not see its economic value. For example, if a student gets the portable subsidy and that student uses it to pay for a private school education, that private school will be able to pay their teachers. That teacher will be able to, to have a quality of life, and that money revolves around the economy. It becomes active. The school will be able to build infrastructure or purchase, technology, and that will also fuel the economy. So it's really using government's money so that it revolves around the economy. And this is going to be a fund where the community is a part of the development of the educational sector. This is an agenda. These are agenda that I'm laying out on the ground. These are just initial because there's still an ongoing consultation I'm doing with the teachers group, the private schools group, the learners group, the parents group, and others, as I navigate this quote-unquote campaign, which intention is not only to convince people to vote, but also to talk to people so that we can make a difference. I took this road, they say noisy and magulong world of politics, because I felt duty bound to contribute to how we could change the way they're running government. So unless we make our feet wet right there, we may not be able to achieve a lot. And I stand by the Thomasian spirit that, if everybody's seated, you may need to stand up. And if everybody's standing up, you might want to stand out. If everybody has stood out, maybe you want to be the standard. Or if everyone is already the standard, maybe you want to be outstanding. Behind me is my medal as an outstanding Thomasian alumni, and I commit to live up to the faith, hope, and love. And imbued with unending grace, I will always carry the torch of UST, and what I've learned in the UST will become my moral compass to serve and to make other people's lives better. So I am making this stand, and the magic word is really to make a stand. Thank you so much, and congratulations to the UST Alumni Association, to the committee that staged this AAIG. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carl, for that very insightful talk. And yes, a lot of sharings has been made by Dr. Carl, starting from making a point that in handling change, of course, let's shy away from the revolution, even evolution, and let's go for transformation. And yes, in the VUCA, he proposed a new VUCA that means vision, understanding, meeting the challenges and looking for solutions, being agile or agility, and of course, the H, humanity. So, and that all accounts for really preparing or educating the person of the future, which we all look forward to. So thank you very much. And of course, thank you for sharing the Philippine Quality Framework, the Philippine Educational Development Model, and of course, the PRC study, and most importantly, of course, your legislation agenda. And I myself look forward to having that individual learning account. You know, I guess that will truly support lifelong learning for all of us. So once again, thank you very much, Doc Carl. And as we move on with our program, we said earlier that we will not have a Q&A or open forum. Instead, for this webinar, we will be having the impressions. And please feel free to put in the chat box your impressions, not only of this webinar 4, but starting from the webinar 1, 2, and 3, or the entire AAIG Summit for 2021. And so before we proceed to the next part of this webinar, we would like to show a short video to acknowledge all our sponsors. Thank you again to all our sponsors. And please watch this video.
Malaki ang epekto sa amin ng pandemic. Bagsak ang negosyo namin pero sinagip kami ng online selling. Kung hindi siguro dahil sa Globe, wala kasi nag-try ako ng iba. Wala very reliable ang network nila.
Sa aming mga nagla-livestream, mahalaga yung maayos na koneksyon. Nakakahiya pag naglalagang signal. Malaki na pinag-iba ngayon. Okay na yung 4G pero mas lalong gumanda ng 5G. Our live stream will not be possible kung hindi malakas ang signal ng Globe.
Yung alam ko na 15 to 20 Mbps na speed, nadoble na pala. Partida, 4G lang ang gamit ko nito. Ang laking bagay kasi pag yung video calling sa streaming hindi naglalag. Pati yung pag-feed namin sa base, sobrang smooth na din. Ever since I'm using Globe, kaya kitang-kita ko ang improvement na network.
Because so much of our lives are online. If you get disconnected,
ready for our recitation, kids?
do you even exist? Welcome to the Red Life. Introducing Red Fiber. 100% fiber internet. A life with reliable connection. With flexible plans for different lifestyles. No worries of getting cut off. And dependable customer service. So when it matters most, you're always ready.
Good job, Jacob.
Get ready for the Red Life. Red Fiber. Reliability redefined.
Thank you to Globe Telecoms, CBRC Vice, Radios Telecom, and Metro Rail Transit Corporation. Now, please be reminded to remain until the very end for the highlight of this webinar, which is, of course, the manifestation of solidarity. And don't forget that at the end, there will also be a photo opportunity. So moving forward, now we go to the sharing portion, or what we call the impressions. And we would like to call on the following representatives to give their impressions. And of course, later we will also be going to the Q&A chat box to read some of your impressions. And to join us will be representatives from the Academe, a representative from the alumni, from the industry, and as well, of course, the participants of Webinar 4. So without much further ado, may I call on Dr. Leandro Loyola, the Director of the College of Student Affairs, De La Salle University, Laguna Campus.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes. Good morning.
All right. Yeah, good morning again, everyone. And I'm so glad to be with all of you today and to have completed the AAIG webinar series. I was able to attend all the sessions. And I really find the sessions worthwhile, considering the opportunity to listen to high caliber speakers who are also the experts in their respective fields. I actually congratulate the organizers of this event, of course. Special mention to Dr. Eve and to Ma'am Jo of the CCPED. And of course, all the people who are behind the success of this event. Well, for today, I am tasked to give a short recount of my appreciation or impression on the different learning sessions that happened from an academics perspective, or from an academician's perspective. Well, I have summarized my key takeaways into 3 C's: collaborate, create, and cultivate. Collaboration is essential, as it is the first step in establishing meaningful relationship with the different stakeholders. The Academe, now more than ever, recognizes the importance of building partnerships with the alumni, industry, and even the government agencies to ensure that they can provide the quality education that the students so rightfully deserve. These collaborations encourage symbiotic relationship among these partners as they get to create opportunities for improvement and continuous development, not only of the students, but even of the leaders and movers in the different sectors. Each of the partners play a significant role in molding the future of the youth by creating relevant programs and initiatives that will equip them with the prescribed 21st century skills. The skills that will prepare the students not only in the world of work and the globally competitive aspect of business, but also in becoming an integral human being. The partners are responsible of planting the seeds of aspiration for the students to do more and be more. Therefore, the cultivation of these skills and aspirations is necessary, and this should be done by means of expertise in the field, clarity of core values, alignment of non-negotiable ethical practices in the organization, meaning to say there should be no room for any disinformation or revisionism, strong sense of responsibility and accountability, and genuine promotion of human dignity. Educational transformation encourages openness among the different stakeholders in harnessing their powers and influence. It requires strong collaboration to create a sustainable ecosystem that must be cultivated for the common good. Again, I salute all the speakers for sharing their experiences and expertise that really inspired educators like me. Again, maraming salamat po at magandang umaga sa ating lahat.
Thank you. Thank you to Dr. Leandro Loyola from the Academe. And now we move forward to the representative of the alumni. May we call on Dr. Mildred Mariano of the Tomasinong Kapampangan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dwight, we're okay. Yeah. The UST Alumni Association believes that alumni community can play a very crucial and important role in preparing our students beyond Industry Revolution 4.0. We would like to share with you the the Thomasian three core values of competence, compassion, and commitment, which can apply to all of us. We believe that the alumni bring with them real-life work experiences that serve to prepare the graduates to the challenges of real-life work experiences. We believe that alumni associations can function beyond the traditional social club character and champion projects and programs that enhances our collective sense of humanity. We also believe that alumni associations can champion academic-related activities that promote inclusive success. We are one in the goals and objectives of AAIG 2021 and vow to continue supporting its mission towards a robust and transformative education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mildred Mariano, and speaking for the alumni. And now, from the industry, may we call on Mr. Emmanuel Strada, who is the Senior Vice President, Technology Strategy and Service Innovation of Globe Telecom.
Good morning, everyone.
Good
Pleasure
morning.
to be here with you. I was here for the last 3 sessions, and really, I must say, this particular year's AAIG Summit has really been enlightening and thought-provoking, to say the least. This year's summit is all about education transformation with the theme transitioning the graduates to Industry 4.0 workplace. It is very timely and highlights the need for strong, meaningful partnerships between all stakeholders in our journey towards Industry 4.0. The importance of being passionate about fundamentals and foundational knowledge of students to the future success of our graduates has been highlighted in so many sessions across these 4 days. We have a need to entice our students towards STEM fundamentals and encourage investments in STEM education as our investments in the future. When you come to think of it, partnerships between academe and industry make sense in preparing today's students to be ready as a future workforce, not just for Industry 4.0, but for future industries X.0. As you can imagine, these partnerships provide a potent bond beyond theory, research and development, and industry best practices, and the interactive fusion of which certainly prepares students for the future. The COVID pandemic has become one of the biggest global disruptions in our times, practically closing down all segments of the global community. But the hardest hit is our educational system. But we cannot let education stagnate for long. We cannot continuously say, let's close down the schools because the students could get infected, which means to say that we have to be able to find ways and means to educate our children despite the pandemic. Workforce 4.0 starts with the learner. And when we say learner, we do not simply refer to the students in the different learning institutions. It refers to even the current workforce and management teams that thrive and pilot today's industry towards the adoption of Industry 4.0. Today's industry prepares a workforce equipped with critical thinking, complex problem solving, and collaboration over pure technical skills. I can personally attest to this as an industry practitioner, and hence even our cadetship screening programs focuses on uncovering these skills from the applicants because we believe that technical skills training the industry can provide. But the 3, critical thinking, complex problem solving, and collaboration, are more difficult to hone within a short period of time frame that we need to be able to have to pilot Industry 4.0. These developing skills have to start at the areas of educational development. And simply stated, education is the foundation of our future, and we cannot let disruptions such as COVID hinder our educational programs. Digital connectivity and access to the internet is the most important and is now considered a basic human right, and the government's present move to open up the countries for more satellite providers, coupled with the government and industry's investments in expanding connectivity for our public schools and also across the nation to all communities, is important and very timely. Our connectivity has to extend beyond domestic connectivity, not just simply connecting people to people, but and schools to people, but even things and objects and machines together. And that's the reason why the industry as a whole invests over 180 billion pesos annually for the last 10 years in order to do this. To soften the impact of disruptions itself, the industry itself embarked on initiatives geared to develop Workforce 4.0. Examples of this were the Global Filipino Schools, Global Learning itself, GoLearn, and even making STEM learning accessible to our learners. And by doing this, industry has actually started to partner with the Academe and even with the alumni to make this happen, because this is the only way we can work together. It's a catalyst for our future educational systems to have transformational education. Across the years, the industry has gathered learning significantly in this pursuit of this own self-propelled and self-designed learning methodologies. One of our key important learnings that STEM education is key in developing 21st century skills, non-negotiable totally. This provides for workforce readiness. Accessible learning content remains to be important. That's why the initiatives and legislative agenda of Dr. BALITA is very much welcome and very timely. Seriously, you have our support. Online safety, when everything going online, there's so much information around. The problem is that with so much information, you have to be able to find out and understand which are true, valid, relevant, and usable. And the rest, the memes, the fake news, you have to be able to discern and discard. That's why critical in understanding how distance learning would be valuable is to provide a view of how online safety should be done. And that's the reason why online safety or the responsible use of technology is at the core of digital citizenship. Overall mental wellness is important. Psychosocial support includes self-care and wellness and resiliency for teachers. Another important note is that educational technologies and AI are not meant to replace the teachers, but to make teachers and educators more effective and to enable them to be the prime movers to revolutionize the academy. IQ used to be important, but today emotional quotient is more important. But again, there's another Q, CQ, which is also even more important. What is CQ? It's correct, courage quotient. So means a combination of IQ, EQ, and CQ are important to know, persevere, and take action courageously, because disruptive changes today require courageous change agents to lead, navigate. And education is at the core of this requirement. Lastly, we should not forget technology cannot replace humanity. And that is where the human factor begins. Technology and society are heavily interconnected, and by 2025, AI will parallel human intelligence. Imagine what we can all do if we can harness AI for the good of humanity to navigate a VUCA world. Finally, in conclusion, let me end by sharing this with you. Industry 4.0 will definitely require radical changes in the competencies and skills of the workforce that are needed to pilot our transition from traditional industries to digitally enabled industries. Already, gaps have been identified in our educational system, starting with the basic fundamentals of science and math, English comprehension impacting our ability to develop future competencies and capabilities, so critical to our country's adaptation of Industry 4.0. It is clear then that the government needs to create the vision of our nation's roadmap and target for the future, not just for Industry 4.0, but for our national development. For industry to understand and identify competencies, capabilities, skill sets, and mindsets of the workforce to drive the industry forward to the vision set by the government. For us alumni who are here now, who are now part of the industry and the workforce, to provide clarity to the academe and real about the real world competencies that we really need. Because sometimes without really understanding what it is in the real world, then you are technically liable to make mistakes in your educational programs. In that way, the academe can develop programs and curriculum and engagement responses towards the rest of the stakeholders as needed by the industry. We need to work closely with the academe so that the experiences of the alumni, the current workforce, can share their expertise to be shared with the faculty and the students and made integral part of the academic development of what I would now like to call Learner 4.0. So kung meron Education 4.0, meron din na Learner 4.0 to support Industry 4.0. But Learner 4.0 is not just the students today. I believe that at some stage, everyone needs to be one of the learners, continuous learning. Sabi nga kanina ni Dr. BALITA, no, na continuous learning is important. No? A basic skill is to be able to continuously learn. Yan ang sinasabi kanina. Finally, we need VUCA to adapt to a VUCA world. Ano ba yung VUCA na yun? Sabi ko kanina, vision, understanding, clarity, adaptability, and humanity. Given this today more than ever, the importance of establishing and sustaining collaborative partnerships between academe, alumni, industry, and government is more pronounced and apparent. It is not negotiable. We all have to work together. This year's USAIG is spot on catalyzing a better understanding of our nation's challenges. A lot of ideas and plans and programs from the various stakeholders have been shared, and many of these can be replicated across all segments of the industry. But what is needed next, and I quote Dr. BALITA, is for us to stand up, take action, stand out. And when we stand out, we go for becoming the standard for everyone to emulate, and then we become outstanding. Surely, by working together as one, we will be able to build up the Filipinos' capability and competency for our nation's future. As we say in our company, pagsama-sama, tulong-tulong tungo sa isang atikain, lahat posible. #atin ang mundo. We in the AAIG Summit have defined a framework for transitioning our learners. But beyond this, there is more work to be done. And perhaps this is even more challenging than transitioning the graduates to a formidable Industry 4.0 or X.0 workplace. It is that of keeping these talents and keeping a workforce engaged and for them to stay in the Philippines. Put out the challenge to the UST AAIG to think about it for a while. We are building up all of these competencies, but if the competences all go away because we do not have the right policies to keep them together, no programs to keep them together, then we will continuously be at a loss and yearning to have this workforce for us in the future. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manuel Estrada, and for representing the industry. And so thank you to all our invited panelists for representing the respective sectors and for giving their impressions. It is a pleasure, of course, to have you with us. And now I would like to have this opportunity to read some of the impressions submitted by our participants. So from Raymond Datuon, AAIG Summit 2021 is truly a great venue for multisectoral collaboration and discussion for educational transformation during this pandemic. from Annabel Fajardo. My first impression on this webinar is that it will be informative enough to assist educators to transform and adapt to the vast change that is happening due to the pandemic. And Kristen Phil, the AAIG collaboration is a sustainable opportunity to adopt innovative and collaborative practices wherein connecting the academe and the industry gap. Okay, I am supporting this platform as I believe it will lead to the national level success. Albert Lee, the AAIG Summit 2021 is an eye-opening event for total educational transformation due to its inclusiveness and data-driven approach. Karen Pineda, I am grateful for knowledge gained from the esteemed speakers in this series of seminars, CODUS to UST AAI and more, please. Okay, from Princess Jelaine de Guzman, this seminar is incredibly informative and the speakers are very impressive. Thank you. From Sheila Kalya, I want to extend my gratitude to all the speakers for giving such an insightful and articulate sentiments in this webinar. CODUS and Raymar Lastimoso, I've learned a lot from Doc Carl Balita. The topic is relevant and important to me as a pre-service teacher, and being able to attend this webinar is an honor. Thank you, Doc Carl Balita. And from Nenita Robles, thank you and congratulations, AAIG. This is indeed a relevant venue for the collaboration of the 4 sectors. From somebody who is anonymous, the topics of the AAIG Summit 2021 are very relevant to the situation that we are in right now. Kudos to the team and organizers, and thank you to all resource speakers. From Crescencia Gabihan, kudos to the very convincing presentation of Dr. Carl that raises the teacher's self-esteem while solidly grounding one's feet in contemporary society with its challenges, with the fiery spirit of a Thomasian. From Adrian Montemayor, this webinar series has been very eye-opening and intellectually stimulating. Congratulations to the organizers for selecting excellent speakers. Thank you. Joseph Avaricio, very educative. Yes, we have a lot more actually, and let me go through some more. Maria Angeline Del Rosario de la Paz, thank you AAIG and USC organizers, insightful talks, supporting the importance of education to more webinars like this. Marian Joy Caspe Brillo, the webinar was insightful in terms on our goal towards a better education in our institution amidst the challenges. From Carl Sid Obara, this is my impression to the webinar series. It's very organized and topics are very relevant and informative. It's good to know that our speakers from day one are very much adept in explaining the topics being discussed. I gained a lot of relevant insights regarding the current situation of our education system and how we can cope up with the changes in the educational environment. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this webinar series. Mabuhay po kayo. From Mirnalyn Pautan, this morning's summit is very informative and relevant. We need to think together in order to act together and shape the futures that we want. Michelle Lorio, the entire webinar was very interesting, informative, and insightful. Good job. Proud Thomasian here. And Edsel Olarte, thank you so much for the opportunity, for this opportunity. It was impressively great listening and learning from our exemplary and exceptional resource speakers, hoping to engage for another webinar from you. Thanks a lot. Okay, Maria Corazon Andoy, the AAI Summit, very insightful sharings of esteemed speakers. Congratulations to the organizers. Okay, we have a few more minutes. Cheers to UST for this very informative, relevant, and timely program series, hearing and updates from the experts and speakers from the academic, industry, and government is indeed very great. Through their evidence-based and experiences, we learn a lot of insights which also made us reflect. Their collaborative and valuable inputs are also very great basis for decision-making for improvement. Cheers to you all. Okay. Jason Parena, my impression is that this webinar is forward-looking. Marisa Mayrena, one of the best gatherings of current educational leaders. Thank you, UST alumni, for this meaningful learning opportunity. Congratulations. From Leah Marisa Domingo, this National Multisectoral Summit for Educational Transformation, which is a collaboration among the academic, industry, and government, opened a beautiful landscape of opportunities amidst challenges. Okay, collaboration among the three stakeholders mentioned indeed is key to transformational education and eventual global competitiveness for Filipino students. I embrace the opportunity to contribute in any way I can to promote learning to learn among my students so that they will be lifelong learners as they become leaders in the future. Thank you to all immensely generous speakers and to the UST Alumni Association for organizing this awesome summit. Thank you. Another from an anonymous attendee, passion is making a difference. From Teresa Agana, actually, I don't have any questions. It's just that I want to commend the group for we are so fortunate to be part of this webinar. I salute all the highly respectable probably speakers for a very informative, reflective, full of insights that we really need, especially during this time. More power to AAIG. God bless us all. From Ramon Marticio, this webinar 4 is so enlightening, eye-opener on the different sectors of the society to collaborate to deal with this VUCA world to achieve a potent, sensible educational transformation in today's environment. From Marcela Claudette Sevilla, my impressions, deep gratitude to USTAI for organizing this summit on educational transformation. This is very timely, relevant, especially that we are faced with challenges brought by the pandemic. I agree that collaboration, creativity, and cultivation are key. Yes, this is truly a catalyst for more action. Yan. We should all work together. Kaya mamaya, meron tayong expression of solidarity. From Patrick Pepa, timely and relevant topics presented by credible and excellent resource speakers. And I apologize for all the others that I could not read all of it for now, but they are all shared in the Q&A portion. We can all take a look at it. In the meantime, of course, we have to move on with our program. And up next is the manifestation of our solidarity. As you know, as we end this series for 2021, we have the National Multisectoral Summit for Educational Transformation. And this collaboration of the academe, alumni, industry, and government will not be complete without our expression of solidarity, of course, moving forward to the future that we all envision. So let me call on Professor Dr. Evelyn A. Songko, the President of the UST Alumni Association, Inc., to recite the AAIG 2021 Manifestation of Solidarity.
Good morning, everyone. My heart is full of joy. My mind is full of information, of insights, of conceptual framework, and I am so happy. Of course, I would like to greet Dean Henry Tenedero, the chair of the UST AAI Board of Trustees and the convener of the 2021 AAIG. I'd like to greet also Associate Professor Jocelyn Agawili, who is the director of the USTCC PED, and at the same time, the president of the CRS Alumni Association. I'd like to greet Ms. Ida, of course, Ida Tionco, the chair of our academics committee of the UST AAI. Definitely good morning to the presidents and officers of the alumni associations, our distinguished guest speakers, and definitely you, our participants. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, good morning. Isang mainit na pagbati para sa inyong lahat. What else can I say? When everything has been said and done, and the webinar is now over, almost over, what is the next thing for us to do? You see, our shared experiences from 2019 AAIG served as an inspiration for the 2021 AAIG. The theme of each series of this webinar 2021 was derived from the themes that emerged from the meaning making that was done by Dean Henry Tinedero when he wrote the summary of 2019 AAIG. And so, this recent experience that we had, the 2021 AAIG, is equally inspiring. As a matter of fact, I was inspired by all your impressions. And the speakers, the very active participation of everyone is actually very inspiring. And so recognizing that the alumni, particularly the young professionals, are beneficiaries of a sustained conversation and collaboration between and among the academe, industry, and government, the UST-AAI commits itself to facilitate and nurture academe, industry, government conversations. We believe that such conversations will lead to a robust educational system that will produce graduates who are ready to join the world of work characterized by Industry 4 that should really transform to Industry 5, where humanity is at the heart of the ecosystem. Believing in the role that each and every one of us here play in this robust educational system, I'd like to invite you all to join us in manifesting in solidarity with one another so that we can compel, impel, and propel a sustained academe, alumni, industry, government conversation, convergence, and collaboration. So today, ladies and gentlemen, let us all together say the 2021 AAIG manifestation of solidarity. Please say with me, we, the members and friends of the UST Alumni Association Incorporated, who actively participated in the National Multisectoral Summit of Academe, Alumni, Industry, and Government 2021, held on September 3 and 17, October 1 and 15, 2021 via Zoom, hereby declare and manifest in solidarity with one another our commitment to the following statements. Whereas we are cognizant of the multifarious challenges that fresh graduates experience as they search for rewarding careers in employment or entrepreneurship in today's world of work. Whereas we recognize the important roles that the alumni, academe, industry, and government play in national development and in unique contribution that each of them make in creating favorable environments and innovative pathways that enable fresh alumni in transitioning successfully from their pursuit of academic qualifications to their meaningful practice of a profession or a vocation. Whereas we value the need for open communications, continuing engagements, and joint collaborations among academe, industry, and government in forging collective and alumni-centric initiatives aimed at propelling the fresh alumni toward optimized personal, professional, and economic well-being and development. And whereas we believe that the empowered alumni is a critical contributor to the nation's social capital formation and an indispensable force toward the realization of the ambition, inclusive, and sustainable development of the Philippines today and well into the future. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the AAIG 2021 participants affirm that the AAIG 2021 shall serve as a historical milestone that sets into motion the sustainable regular staging of an AAIG summit every other year. Endorse that the UST Alumni Association Incorporated and the UST Center for Continuing Professional Education shall continue to spearhead the organizing of the AAIG summits with support from friends and other like-minded individuals and groups. Commit that in between two AAIG summits, continue conversations, collaborations, and initiatives with significant alumni, academic, industry, and government partners shall be undertaken at various levels: regional, provincial, city, municipal, or institutional, to create synergies, achieve successes, and drumbeat widening awareness and interest, leading to the staging of the subsequent AAIG summits. Manifested this 15th day of October 2021. Thank you very much, everybody. Marami pong salamat sa inyong pakikiisa. Mabuhay kayong lahat.
Yes. And thank you, Dr. Evelyn Songko, for the manifestation of solidarity. Now, before we move on to the closing remarks, I would like to take this opportunity to thank again all our guest speakers for today. Let us now move on to our awarding of certificates to our guest speakers. First, we have for Dr. WILFREDO E. CABRAL. Okay, for Jamie METZL, Dr. Jamie METZL. For Dr. Ernesto J. G. ADALEM. And of course, for Dr. Carl E. BALITA. Thank you. Thank you to our speakers. And now for the closing remarks, let me call on Dean Henry S. Tenedero, the chairman of the UST Alumni Association, Inc., and the convener of the AAIG 2021 Summit.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Atty. Dwight. Thank you so much, President Evelyn Songko, for the powerful recitation of our collective manifestation of solidarity. As we bring to a close a chapter of our journey of collaborating the alumni, the academe, the industry, and government towards a robust ecosystem of transformative education, it brings to my mind the powerful speech, and if I may paraphrase Martin Luther King when he said, "I have a dream that one day my children will be judged not by the color of their skins, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that one day this manifestation of solidarity will not only be etched in print and letters, but will find its way in the hearts and minds of those who believe that only through a big collaboration, inclusive partnership, can we truly make and have a transformative kind of education. An education that not only highlights the intellectual prowess of everyone, an intellectual prowess that is cascading to the hearts of everyone, thriving, pivoting, innovating in the midst of the pandemic. Let me give you the 7 high points of what AAIG 2021 is all about. It's a story of dreams and visions coming to life. We desire at the UST Alumni Association to function beyond the character of a mere social club by embracing projects and programs that engages one humanity, one ecosystem. For after all, majority of the alumni are industry practitioners. And there's no point of not harnessing the collective expertise of these individuals towards creating a more dynamic and more prosperous level of understanding of the workplace among our students. So number 1, high point, AAIG 2021 is about catalyzing change, adapting innovative and collaborative practices that believe that change may be the most permanent thing in this world, but change that's emanating from within, from a desire to make good use of our experiences in the midst of all this pandemic, will become a meaningful change in our midst. Second high point, AAIG 2021 is about forging strategic alliances for sustained partnerships towards inclusive growth. We believe that the government cannot do it alone, that the industry who keeps on harping that we need to re-educate our new graduates so things that could have been covered when they were in school. To our Academe, who looks at academic affairs, translating from the experiences of our industry practitioners and the alumni, waiting to be tapped, waiting to be cajoled to action. That's why we are forging strategic alliances for a reason of coming together, as what Dr. Fe mentioned in her opening remarks. Coming together not only in one summit, but coming together in a sustained fashion, in a sustained collaboration that will truly mean success in everything that we do. Number 3 high point is that AAIG 2021 is building skills and competencies that is looking at the traditional IQ, believing that every person has genius potential in more ways than one. A declaration that I say here, na lahat tayo ay may taglay na henyo, ng katalinuhan is not only a product of those who are good in language and math, but intelligence that is a many splendor thing, believing that indeed every person, everyone has genius potentials in more ways than one, which more often than not is neglected or rejected by traditional education. So we want to build skills and competencies anchored on multiple intelligence, IQ plus EQ plus DQ, in intellectual quotient, emotional quotient, and DQ, grit quotient. Diskarte sa gitna ng pandemya para hindi ka lamang mabuhay, kundi mabuhay ka ng buong makabuluhang. Number 4, AAIG 2021 is redefining the very essence of what we call human capital development. For no amount of high technology without high touch, it's nothing but simply a developmental aspect in the realm of infrastructure. Online learning, digital platforms should be a combination of both high tech na, high touch pa. And this is what AAIG is trying to bring forth. The message and hope that human capital is the best capital that we have, that we need to create a humanics curriculum by combining technology, data literacy, and the third and most important, the human literacy. For we are moving from 4.0 industrial revolution to 5.0 human-centric evolution, creating new ways of thinking, doing, and being, where the human being is at the center of any kind of development. Number 5, AAIG 2021 is engaging what I call the alumni power, which stands for partnerships, organizations, the will, the expertise, and resources. When we combine all this power into one collective humanity, one ecosystem, then we will have a synergy of ideas and thoughts that will blossom in our midst and create a humanistic education anchored on transformative way of looking at education. Number 6, we are responding together. We are communicating beyond the syntax of language, that the words that you hear will not have meaning unless they are cascaded to the human and human spirit of the human persona, addressing local and global employment challenges, being aware of what's happening not only in the Philippines, but throughout the world, where we see a lot of digitalization. We want to put heart in the midst of all this exciting development happening in our society. And finally, number 7, AAIG is not a one-shot deal. We began in 2019. We were hit by the pandemic. We were supposed to do a caravan in 2020, but the pandemic halted us. But we are continuing the journey of coming together for the common good. That's why after this AAIG 2021, our team will once again convene and document the whole process to create a story, because AAIG in essence is about a story of life, a story of dreams and visions coming to life. And that story will not only be shared by those who participated in the 4 webinar series, but this will be brought to the different nooks and corners of our archipelago. That's why we have DepEd, we have CHED, we have the TESDA, we have the industry partners to help us cascade, to herald, to bring the clarion call to every Filipino who wishes to create a beautiful life for themselves and for the whole society. So my dear friends, maraming salamat sa inyong partisipasyon. Nagbigay buhay muli ang ating pag-asa na sa gitna ng hirap at pag-asa, edukasyon pa rin ang mahalaga. Edukasyon na hindi magpapalagana para dun sa mayayaman, kundi equity in education na yung mga tao napakasimple lamang, pero iisang pangarap, iisang damdamin ay kasama natin sa isang maunlad na buhay. Yan ang masasabi natin ang tunay na kahulugan ng education. Education that matters. Education that is equitably distributed across the levels of the different sectors of our society. So once again, to my dear co-organizers of this event, thank you for journeying with us. The journey does not stop today, but a new chapter in the story of AAIG has just begun. We will be continuously in touch with you, and God bless humanity. God bless our ecosystem, coming together, standing together, being outstanding together for one beautiful humanity. Maraming salamat po.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Dean Henry. And such great passion. Yan ang tinatawag, Dean Henry, pagmamahal na talaga ito. And that shows the way forward for all of us in this AAIG Summit. So before we finally close this event, I would like to ask all our panelists and guest speakers to remain for a few more minutes after we play the UST hymn for a group photo. And we would like to encourage all participants to fill out the evaluation form as posted in the chat box. Certificates will be provided after the submission of the completed evaluation forms. If you have any questions, please feel free to send an email to AAIGSummit2021@gmail.com. And to view a recording of today's webinar, you may visit the following FB pages: UST AAI, UST GSCCPED, and the CBRC Vice. To conclude this webinar, we now would like to play the UST hymn. As the video for the closing credits is being played, and before we have the group photo, I would like to thank the AAIG 2021 Secretariat, the UST AAI Academics Committee, the CBRC Vice, and everyone who made this summit possible. I would like also to thank all our sponsors, Globe Telecom, CBRC Vice, Radius Telecom, and Metro Rail Transit Corporation. On behalf of the UST Alumni Association, Inc. and the UST Graduate School Center for Continuing Professional Education and Development, or the CCPED, and all our guest speakers, thank you for joining us today. We hope you have learned and enjoyed today's presentation. Have a great rest of the day. And now we would like to request the panelists and guest speakers to please turn on your cameras or your videos for our group photo.
Please count naman out who's the one taking the picture.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Isa pa po. 1, 2, 3. Salamat po and congratulations po. Thank you very much po.
Thank you very much. Manny, Thank you very much, Dr. Mildred. Fantastic, Dean Henry, passionate. Dr. Aberion, thank you very much. Lito, well, you're there. Thank you. Dr. Fe, thank you very much. Wow, Ida, finally. And John. Uy, thank you, Yoli, you're here. Thank you so much for joining us. And Ma'am Cheryl Peralta, thank you so much for the support,
Father was also here. Si Father
was here. Yeah.
Congratulations to all.
Salamat Dr. Che, and Monsignor Pantin. Thank you. Thank you, John. Mabuhay ka.
Congratulations, everyone. John.
Nasa si
Attorney Dwight, galing.
Ay, Attorney Dwight, congratulations.
Yes,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Kay Kaden, Kay, thank you.
Nandiyan pa ba si Carl?
Music with passion.
Grabe, oo. Wala akong inspired na si Carl. Nandiyan pa ba? Carl Balita, nandiyan ka ba?
Thank you.
Nasaan siya?